Have you been thinking about who the top 10 starting pitchers will be for 2025? Well, I have too, and I'm breaking down 5 risers and 5 fallers when it comes to those starting pitchers for 2025 on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, riding solo today. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings and reviews, I would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel, and it will give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, most importantly, guys, give us a chance on Subtext. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And if you are interested in giving us a chance on Subtext, you can find the link in the bio wherever you're listening or watching, and it's also available on any of our social media platforms. And guys, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And, guys, not everybody is still in contention and fighting for a championship. Not everyone can make it to the promised land. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been doing a look forward into 2025. And today, I have a really fun one for you. So I have, I mentioned this in the past episode, so if you're an avid listener, you might have heard this. I'm already into my starting pitcher rankings for 2025. I'm about 50 deep at this point. Probably will be dropping that on the Subtext sooner than later. So if you are interested in some 2025 content, we're going to be pushing that on the Subtext as well. So do check that out. But first up, I'm going to do 5 guys that have cracked my top 10. Okay, well, a little bit teasy there. So 4 of these guys have officially cracked my top 10. I think 1 I have right outside the top 10. Then after we do the risers, we're going to do some fallers. I actually have 5 guys that were in my top 10 going into, this season that have dropped out. So this is going to be a fun episode. Make sure you lock on for the whole thing. But let's start with this first name. Let's start with Tarik Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. And man, oh man, did this kid have himself a season. And if you listen to me and you drafted him, you made out like a bandit. Sorry, Matt, I got to knock you on this one. Matt was knocking on Skubal. Didn't really think he could do it. Look at these numbers from Skubal. Through 29 starts, he has a 2.50 ERA, 16 wins, 4 losses, 180 innings pitched, 214 strikeouts, a 2.56 FIP, which is fielding independent pitching. It's an ERA indicator, kind of tells you that the ERA is right where it should be, and an 0.94 whip. Now, Tarik Skubal, as a 27-year-old, finally lived up to the hype, gave you that big season we all knew he was capable of, made a 100-inning jump from last year, from 80 innings to 180 innings this year. It just has really been showing it since 2022. We've seen glimpses. In 2022, we saw the start of the breakout, before I believe he got a little bit banged up in 2022 as well. I know he got banged up in 23. So he's just really been that guy that we all knew he could be. The whip is something that he's really known for, has very good control. Tarik Skubal does. And honestly, I'll say you this. I'm not going to tell you which spot, but Tarik Skubal is inside my top 3 starting pitchers for next year. Once again, if you want that exact ranking, join us on Subtext. But Skubal is just somebody that I feel like we can rely on as long as he's going to be out there. He proved the longevity this year, and Tarik Skubal just, major strikeouts, pitches in a good park. Detroit's been really good of late. It's funny. I saw a stat. I believe it was August 22nd. They announced that Baez isn't going to be there anymore, and since August 23rd, the Tigers have had the best record in all of baseball. So that's just great to see. A lot of young talent on that team. I think Skubal is going to be the for sure ace of that team and just hold it down for them. And there's no reason this guy can't be dominant for at least another 3 years or so. I like Skubal, and I really think I'm going to have a lot of him next year. And even as you look at the underlying stuff, right? I know we talk about we don't really talk about, underlying stats too much around here. I know we've been implementing a little bit more of late, but if you go to not StatCast, Baseball Savant is one of the best websites I like to use for underlying stats. As soon as you pull up Baseball Savant, if you type in Skubal, the thing is, if you see red, they have a little chart on the right-hand side when you pull it up. If you see red, it's good. If you see blue, it's bad. All red, pretty much all red for Skubal here. Does everything above average, gets great results on his pitches. Has a strong fastball, averages 97, gets up, to 100 with it. Good changeup, sinker, slider 15% of the time too. Even those curveball 4% of the time, just to keep these batters on their toes. Really like the repertoire of what he brings to the table. None of Tarik Skubal's pitches gets hit for over a 223 batting average. And that's the changeup for Skubal. So, I mean, this kid's just been really, really dominant. I think we're going to draft him next year and just feel really confident. If you have him in dynasty keeper formats, I think you have to have, obviously, keep this guy. And I really wouldn't trade him for anything, for at least this next upcoming season, because honestly, I think this is probably the 99th percentile outcome for Skubal. But I do think there's a world where you could see maybe even a little bit more strikeouts. So let's say, he's at 180 innings, 214 strikeouts this year. If he pitched 180 innings next year, maybe we could see that 225, 230, almost that Spencer Strider, K per 9 type of thing. I think it's possible. So I'm not banking on it, but I think there is a little bit of, room left on the plate for Skubal to go. But you know what? Even if he does this again next season, we're all going to be, super, super happy with it. But let me move on from the Tarik Skubal love fest. I didn't even realize how long that rant went. Let's move on to our next riser. Let's talk about Paul Skenes. You know what the funny thing is? As with Skenes is that you might not expect him to be, a top 10 starting pitcher, as, this was just his rookie year. But, man, when you look at it, you see the talent, 6'6", 235 for the big Paul Skenes. It's pitching for those Pittsburgh Pirates, 22 years old. Let's just talk about what he did this season. That kind of is going to tell you why I think so highly of him, right? 21 starts for Paul Skenes this year, 2.07 ERA, 10 wins. 126 innings, 158 strikeouts, and an 0.98 whip. The FIP is a 2.58 for Paul Skenes. So it kind of just shows you that he's doing what, the underlying stuff expects him to do. And we just haven't seen a young pitcher come up and be this successful. I mean, we saw Strider, do it, but it wasn't really his first, season as just being drafted. He had been around, pitched in the minors for a bit, but Skenes, man, just came up and did it out of the gate. His comp was Steven Strasburg, and I think that's a good one for him, with the hype coming out of college and just, grabbing the bull by the horns and succeeding. I remember Strasburg's I don't think it was his first start. I think it was the first time they said, "Hey, we're gonna let him loose," and or it might have been his last start of his the first season he came up, had a monster game, and we were like, "Oh my god, that's amazing!" This kid's been amazing in his first taste of the game. After getting drafted in 2023, and then this is just a year later, and he's doing this already. I'm sure we're going to see Paul Skenes ranked number 1 by some people as the number 1 starting pitcher. I will preface this. I'm not going to give you exactly where I rank these guys. If you want that, once again, join us on Subtext. But for Paul Skenes, he's in my top 10. I'll say that much. Paul Skenes is in my top 10. Every single underlying statistics for Paul Skenes looks fantastic. Has the monster fastball, gets up over 100 regularly. Sinker, curveball, sweeper, slider, changeup combo there. So he's keeping batters off their toes. I love that. Even if you're mixing in a couple of pitches, 5 to 10% of the time, keeping batters off their toes. And Paul Skenes is excellent at that. He has the only pitch that's getting hit at all is the slider. And that's not one of his mainly featured pitches. But it is something that if he could get a hang of that slider is always a deadly pitch. He only goes 6% of the time. But Paul Skenes definitely a top 10 starting pitcher for next season. And guys, I definitely got to push a little bit faster. With these next 3 starting pitchers that are potentially breaking my top 10 for next year. After that, we're going to do fallers. So make sure you stay locked on because those names and more are coming up next. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, Ellie, or Mahomes rookie cards just isn't in the cards. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com. It's now possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Arena Club slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast, and transparent, with a full grade rationale provided and explanation of how your card was scored. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collection platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and using the code LockedOnMLB. Once again, that's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use the code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. And are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch over to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And then once again, Matt and I want to talk to you about the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on the Subtext platform, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this season wraps up, you can rely on Matt and I for our dynamic content, get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy league by joining the Diamond Club on the Subtext platform, where the path to your victories finish up. Subscribe now and elevate your fantasy baseball experience to a new level. And all right, guys, just jumping right back in, don't want to waste any more time. Let's move on to the third pitcher that has entered my top 10. It's Cole Ragans. Cole Ragans, I don't want to say he came out of nowhere because it's another guy. I saw it coming, right? I really knew I knew Ragans was going to be good. We saw the changes last year after he came over in the trade to Kansas City. They really, really figured it out. They got him working. They got the velocity up. They got, they unveiled the star that was waiting to happen. And Cole Ragans is a student of the game. He's a dude that in the offseason worked on stuff, figured out, not even just this offseason. I'm talking the offseason going into 2023 as well. And you know what it was? I just remember hearing that the Rangers really didn't have the time to put into Ragans, had just taken Kumar Rocker and Leiter. A lot of attention was going to them, just traded for DeGrom and Scherzer and, was really trying to get that situation figured out. Didn't want to put the time into Ragans. And Ragans goes over to Kansas City, gets the time, the coaching, and just really has become a star. So let's talk about what Cole Ragans has done this season for those Kansas City Royals. He was an all-star, has started 31 games, a 3.24 ERA, 11 wins, 180 innings, 217 strikeouts, a 1.14 whip, a 3.01 FIP. He's just doing it. There's no reason that this kid shouldn't be in your top 10. He's 26 years old. I love him. I think he's going to be a staple in that, Kansas City lineup or Kansas City rotation for, at least another 2, 3, 4 more years. Ragans is just, he's that guy. And I was really high on him coming into the year. Sorry I didn't do this with Skubal and Skenes. We'll backtrack a little bit for a second there. I wanted to give you guys ADP coming into the year. So Skubal was coming off the board as a 13th starting pitcher, pick 48. Cole Ragans, we even got to go a little bit further down. We were getting a deal on Ragans. Cole Ragans was coming off the board as the 28th starting pitcher, pick 90. Skenes was way down there. Skenes was somebody that you really were able, I think, to take with like your last pick pretty much. Yeah, I don't even see him. Okay, no, I found him. Skenes was coming off the board, the 82nd starting pitcher, pick 279. So some of you might be saying, Dom, why are we bringing this up, right? So this just goes to show, that you can find some value when it comes to starting pitching, man. And Matt and I specialize, I want to say, in starting pitching. It's one of the things that we're pretty good at when it comes to, analyzing, players for fantasy baseball. I think we really excel at starting pitching. So if you listen to us there, you probably made out pretty well with your starting pitching, because I know I did. I know I did pretty well when it came to pitching this year. And Ragans was somebody I identified early on that I thought was going to be really good. He's moved his way into my top 10 for 2025. I will say this. Some of the underlying stuff doesn't look as good as it does for Skubal and Skenes, but still elite. Still elite in a lot of categories where you want to be elite. Ragans is elite in getting those whiffs, getting the strikeouts. The fastball's a good fastball, has good secondary stuff. When it comes to results with Cole Ragans is, pitches, it's really just his cutter. His cutter's getting banged around pretty bad. Everything else he sees strong results on. So the pitch mix for Ragans is that fastball that I was talking about that gets up, almost at 100 as well. Averages 96. Goes changeup after that, slider, cutter, curveball. So I will say this though for Ragans, he's seen a lot of success this year. The cutter he's throwing 11% of the time. Maybe drop it. Or maybe, because you still have 4 other plus pitches. So maybe we get rid of that cutter and maybe there is another level here for Ragans. Maybe Ragans has that low to mids 2 ERA season where he's another guy that pitched 180 innings so far, like Skubal. But Ragans is a guy I could see having, 220, 230, 240 strikeouts in that amount of time. He's another dude I think there might be another level for Ragans here in his age 27 season next year for 2025. But even if he does the same, is still top 10 starting pitcher results. Let's get into this next guy. I'm going to try and keep it quick here. I am not doing well today on getting through these names because I just love talking about starting pitching, and I want to give you guys some in-depth analysis when it comes to these names. So, I hope you're enjoying it because I'm certainly enjoying talking about these guys. So Logan Gilbert is my next guy. I put the name up, didn't even say it. Logan Gilbert sneaks his way into my top 10, right? We've all been waiting for this. You go back to when this kid was one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball, Logan Gilbert, for the Seattle Mariners. In 2022, where he got his second season, had a 3.20 ERA across 32 starts, 185 innings, 174 strikeouts, and a 1.18 WHIP. And we were all like, if this kid really pulls it together, he could be really good. So I know we were excited for Gilbert coming into, 2023, and he disappointed, kind of took a step back when it came to the ERA, a little bit step forward when it came to the strikeouts, saw the better whip, but I think we were also disappointed. Gilbert did it this year, man. He had the season we all wanted them to do. 30 starts for Logan Gilbert this year for those Seattle Mariners. Oh, interestingly enough, only 7 wins. Seattle kind of wasn't really who we expect them to be as a team this year, so I'm not going to blame it too much on Gilbert. 3.24 ERA in those 191 innings. He had 198 strikeouts. Finally, is up over that K per 9, but the whip is where Gilbert really took a step forward. An 0.88 whip. So it's the hits. He's giving up less contact. Last year, through 1 less inning, had almost over 33 more hits. Really, that's where he took the step in the right direction. 2 less walks in the extra inning, so it really wasn't that. Just giving up less contact. Gilbert has figured it out. Has moved into my top 10. I really like Logan Gilbert. Another guy that's going to be still young, 28 next year. I think we could take him as an ace and feel confident about it. Let's sneak this last guy in. Hunter Greene, right? Hunter Greene is this guy who actually doesn't make my top 10. I'll throw it out there for you guys. I think I put him at 15. So he is on the precipice of breaking, that top 10. He's another guy. Was a top pitching prospect in all of baseball coming up, a few years ago. I wasn't sure if he ever figured it out. I didn't know if Greene would ever be able to put it all together and really just have the kind of year he's having this year. Logan Gilbert. Hunter Greene this season for the Cincinnati Reds has 24 starts, a 2.83 ERA, 9 wins, 143 innings, and 162 strikeouts with a 1.01 WHIP. If Hunter Greene can give you 180 innings next season, I think he's going to be a top 10 starting pitcher easily. Injury concerns because of how hard he throws, averages at, his fastball at a 98 miles an hour. He throws it a lot too. It's 55% of the time. So the thing is, I think when Greene loses velocity, if those secondary pitches don't take that step forward, we're not going to see those results that we're seeing right now, which are dominant. And if you look at all the underlying stuff, really, really good for Hunter Greene. Maybe doesn't get as many ground balls as we would like, especially pitching in, Cincinnati, which is a tougher park to navigate at times. I could see that being his downfall. I think that's going to keep him from being inside my top 10 and wanting to take him as a number 1. But I think Hunter Greene as number 2 next year is going to be very, very good for us. And I think I might not even have to pay that price. I'm kind of hoping that people are still a little bit, standoffish on Hunter Greene, but that might not be the case because of the good results this year. So, guys, I'm going to, push through the fallers fairly quick here in the second half of this episode. I'll tease a couple of names. We got names like Corbin Burns and Kevin Gausman. So those names are coming up next. So make sure you stay locked on. And guys, I'm talking about our friends over at FanDuel. You've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot recently, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we all have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. All right, guys, fallers, this is going to be fun because these names are interesting, right? Corbin Burns. You're like, Dom, this guy has, been ranked pretty much as the number 1 starting pitcher for I want to say the past 3 years or so. But he's been showing signs of taking that back. You go all the way back to, 2023. I don't want to say all the way back, but you go back to 2023 and we started to kind of see it coming along. In 2023 for Burns, it was the 3.39 ERA, 193 innings, only 200 strikeouts. And Burns was somebody that was way, way over that K per 9. You go back to 21 and 22 was blowing those numbers out of the water. So you're like, that's a little bit down. The whip went from sub 1 in the 2021 and 2022 to a 106 in 2023. So we're like, as a 28-year-old, kind of taking a little bit of a step back, and he kind of did the same thing going to Baltimore this year. Corbin Burns, I thought he was going to take a step back towards the guy he was in Milwaukee. But he hasn't. 30 starts this year for Corbin Burns with the Baltimore Orioles, 14 wins, a 3.06 ERA. You like to see that. 182 innings, 164 strikeouts, and a 1.11 whip. So the whip goes up, the strikeouts go down. The ERA went down, but it's still not what we thought he was going to be. I got to do some evaluations. I think Burns might have 1 start left. I don't think that's going to move the needle too much. If he goes out there and has a dominant game, maybe strikeouts, maybe I could find him sneaking into my top 10. I still think I'm going to have him. He's a guy that's still moving around. So I still think Corbin Burns is going to be in my top 12. I think we can take Burns as an ace next year and feel comfortable. But I think with your SP2 with Burns, now you might need a strikeout guy. Where you thought Burns was just going to be, I'll rack up the strikeouts. I don't know if that's the case anymore with Burns. Getting a little bit older, going to be 30 next year. Being a starting pitcher is very, very hard. It's a lot of peaks and valleys. Even though if you go look at the underlying stuff for Corbin Burns, it's all red. Everything looks really good for him. So I'm not going to say that I think he's going to take a drastic step back. I think just the strikeouts, if they aren't going to be at that K per 9 or above that K per 9, it's really hard to have a guy like that inside the top 10 when you have dudes that are going to have similar ERA, similar amount of wins, and the Ks are really going to be that deciding factor. I'd even take a guy with a little bit of a worse whip if he's going to give me a lot more strikeouts. So with Burns, the Carter taking a step back this year. The Carter last year for Burns was getting hit at a 209 clip. This year it's getting hit at a 262 clip. Oddly enough, the velocity on his cutter, Corbin Burns, up a whole mile an hour in 2024 from 2023. Worst results, better overall ERA, worst whip for Burns. So still a starting pitcher that I really like, but I don't know if he's going to be the Corbin Burns of old, and I don't know how much we should be investing in him. Let's move on to this next guy that I think is falling out of the top 10. It's Gerrit Cole of the New York Yankees. Cole, age comes into play here with him. The results are another thing. Very, very mixed bag for Cole this year. Injuries with the come with age. Underlying stuff looks bad for Cole. Cole's going to be an interesting one, man. I think there's a world where Gerrit Cole does what Chris Sale did this year and comes back and is just absolutely flat out dominant, and we kind of see a 2023 version of Cole. But there's also a world where Gerrit Cole does the Max Scherzer and racks up injuries and the innings aren't there. So I'll say this: Cole is a guy that I definitely don't want as my one next year. I can't see Cole. I think he'll be outside my top. I know he'll be outside of my top 12. I think Cole will wind up outside of my top 15. It's just weird. It's weird for a guy that has been the best pitcher in baseball at times over the past 5 years to just see him falling down the ranks. And Burns, same for Burns. I think Burns is going to be another guy that if he does take that dip too, we're going to be like, just damn. It sucks to see guys that we've relied on for years fall from grace. But with Cole, like I said, I can't see him as my one next year. I'm going to keep things pushing though because I still have a few more names to cover before we wrap. Zac Gallen. Zac Gallen's moving outside my top 10. He's another one. Weird year for Gallen. Weird year when I kind of thought Gallen had secured himself as one of these young, thriving starting pitchers in the MLB to where, step back again for, a guy like this. Zac Gallen this year, 26 starts, a 3.61 ERA, 12 wins, 137 innings, only 140 strikeouts, and a 1.27 whip. Now, Zac Gallen did this same exact act, but a little bit worse back in 2021 after having 2 really good years in 19 and 20. Maybe that's a Zac Gallen thing. Maybe he's like the Aaron Nola, where it's similar to Aaron Nola, 2 good years, bad year, 2 good years, bad year. But I don't like to play games like that. When it comes to Gallen, man, it's just another guy. I don't want him as my one. Definitely just don't want him as my one, even as my 2. I feel like I'm going to be out on Gallen next year because I feel like the price is still going to be higher than we want it to be. Underlying stuff for Gallen this year doesn't really look good. Getting bad results on his fastball. It's tough to pitch in this league without a fastball. His fastball is getting hit at a 288 clip. The changeup a 267 clip. Just when you don't have, some of your better pitches working, it's tough to get good results as a starting pitcher. So Zac Gallen, and this is going to be another guy that I'm fading next year. Let's move on to this next guy, Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo was, I know he was going to people's top 5s, last year. And I feel like he's another case similar to Burns where I still believe in the talent. I still think Castillo is going to be good. But when you look at Castillo's stats from this year, 3.64 ERA, 175 innings, 175 Ks, took a step back in the Ks, 1.16 whip, took a step back in that too. And when it comes to Luis Castillo, the last 2 years, his FIP is way higher than the ERA. A 3.81 FIP last year for Castillo, a 3.92 FIP for this year for Castillo. He's going to be 32 next year. Just somebody that I don't want to see myself banking on. Still going to be good, still going to be in my top 20, but just not my top 10. This last one, man, we've talked about him to almost nauseum this year. Kevin Gausman, I'm over it, man. Matt and I talked about it on a previous episode of how, after being out on Gausman for years, I bought back in last year. It was good, and I, was in again this year. Gausman was bad. Gausman was another guy going as a top 5 starting pitcher last year, pick 31. I told you guys, I know I was in, but I still wasn't in at the price. I was like, if he falls, I take him as a 2. I could see that, but I was not taking Gausman as my 1, and I would not advise it going forward. Gausman's getting old. He's declining, injuries. I can't see it. Even if there is value, even if we're getting him as a 3, I'm not doing it next year. Maybe a 4. But this Kevin Gausman's a guy that's going to be 34 years old next year. Just has been declining. Honestly, I think for a while, this year it's come to like the head where Gausman's stats this year: 29 starts, 4.02 ERA, 170 innings, 153 strikeouts, and a 1.25 WHIP. WHIP is something Gausman's never been known for. I don't know why he was anointed a top 5 starting pitcher last year. I think the ERA is going to be inflated. I don't know if he's going to be a Caper 9 guy anymore, so I'm out on Kevin Gausman. Guys, with that being said, though, thank you all for, listening, watching. Appreciate that. Shout out to our everydayers and listeners. And please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. And then after you make us your first listen each and every day, make my boy, Matt and I's boy Sully on Locked On MLB your second listen each and every day. He does a great job of covering the league a little bit differently than Matt and I do, where Matt and I put our fantasy take on it. Sully just has a general take on the league. And, as the playoffs are coming up, Sully's going to be covering that in depth as to where Matt and I will be doing more of a focus on to look forward into 2025. With that being said, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate you all, and see ya.